I think the morning sessions have hopefully really set up this session and following on from Robert and talking about, you know, what's really what I took from that is the old school and the new school, and this is really what this session is trying to sort of capture. And we're going to look at what does it mean for disrupting banking education, and where do we get the balance right between what's new coming in and what's still valuable and old and that we need to remember as an industry, because we are, the Institute itself, over 142 years old. So I'm delighted with our panel members today who are just going to briefly introduce themselves, but I have with me Callum Grant. I'm going to move my microphone a wee bit, down a wee bit, sorry. I've also got Karen Fairbrother from the Open University. I have Paul Riseborough from Metro Bank, and I have Sara Dodd from Code Clan. Sara, can I start with you? Just want to give the audience a wee bit of background.
Sure. I'm Sara Dodd. I work with Code Clan in Edinburgh and in Glasgow, and we are a digital skills academy. We were set up with a bit of seed corn funding from Skills Development Scotland in response to the Skills Investment Plan, which realised there were about 12,000 jobs going in software development, digital roles, and not enough graduates to fill them. But quite a lot of other graduates from other disciplines who weren't finding roles that were meeting their expectations or matching to their qualifications. We now deliver a 16-week professional software development course that addresses that takes people from non-tech backgrounds and through a very intensive immersive course into becoming software engineers. And it's been very successful, and we've delivered 250 students in the last 2 years into all sorts of roles, all sorts of technology companies, from the startups that are right next to us. When I say startups, that includes people like FanDuel, Skyscanner, Free Agent, some of the really quick growing tech companies, to the banks, RBS, Tesco, Sainsbury's. We haven't hit Metro Bank yet, but there may be an opportunity there.
Next year.
And we are continuing now. We've been asked by a lot of companies, banks included, but also public sector, to evolve our training further to meet the demands of the business community, both in retraining and upskilling. So I'm involved very much in the development of the curriculum. In accreditation, we offer a PDA, which is a SQA qualification at level 8, SCQF level 8, and we're working on new ones in cybersecurity and probably into data too. So I'm involved in the accreditation, the curriculum, and the product development in terms of new courses for that. But saying that, I don't come from a tech background, so I'm one of these imposters, and I suffer deeply from imposter syndrome. But just having, and like many, like my age and that in this field, didn't have a technical education, wasn't available, didn't exist. But I don't worry about that, because 60% of the jobs that the grads will go into that are at university right now don't exist yet either. So we've got a lot to address and a lot to deal with.
Thank you, Sara.
Yeah.
Paul?
Hi, my name's Paul Riseborough. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Metro Bank, so I look after the bank's strategy, all of the product teams, so business, commercial, retail, private banking, all of that kind of good stuff, all of the digital technology teams, and also communications and a lot of the customer marketing. So I'm sure Dan covered it earlier, but we started in 2010. We now have over 50 stores, well over 1 million customers, one of the fastest growing banks in Europe. And our challenge is around ensuring that we provide the right skills to young people, not just young people, but all people that are joining us at a rapid rate. We're hiring well over 100 people a month. So balancing the skills agenda internally with that growth story is a really big challenge for me in my role and for the organisation as a whole.
Thank you. Callum?
Hi, I'm Callum Grant. I'm Product Director at Trailight. We are a compliance technology company operating in the RegTech sector rather than FinTech. Rest assured, we're not constructing AI beings in our business yet, but it's an idea I got this morning. I'm no IT guy. In fact, I still struggle with my iPhone from time to time. But as you can probably tell from my very light black hair, I've been in financial services for about 35 years. I've worked in insurance. I've been in IFA. I spent 16 years in retail banking with Clydesdale and Yorkshire Bank. I then led training and competence for Aviva UK and Ireland before moving into my current role. I do really believe strongly in professionalism in financial services across the board. And as a consequence of that, I spend and invest a fair bit of my time working in the industry. I lead and chair the Training and Competence Strategy Group, which is aimed at identifying T&C good practice across all sectors in financial services. I've worked with the CPD Standards Office. I've written T&C good practice standards and national occupational standards for T&C roles. So that's a bit about me.
Thank you. And Karen?
Hi everybody, hi, I'm Karen Fairbrother. I'm Head of Channel Sales for the Open University. Let me tell you a little bit about the university first, and I'll talk to you about my role and my background. So the Open University, we are the largest university in the UK totally dedicated to distance learning. That means that we offer a scalable, non-extraction solution to our client base. I sit in the business development unit, so we are solely responsible for the B2B solution. So that's working with employers who are looking to sponsor their employers through programs on the Open University. We offer core products, so that's the type of products that you would expect from a higher education institution, so traditional degrees that are delivered through distance learning, a blended approach. And we also offer apprenticeships, so they are higher level, degree level apprenticeships, so that's level 6 and level 7. And we're currently offering apprenticeships both in digital, which is very pertinent to this conversation, and also in level 6 for management, and then also level 7 for leadership and management as well. So my role as Head of Channel Sales, I have a role which is basically engaging with industry bodies, like obviously here today, corporates, and training providers to provide an effective and route to market to provide competitive advantage for the university. Our approach is very much looking at how we can identify those opportunities, make them commercially viable for both parties, and also put in place a route to market that allows exposure for as many individuals as possible to have the opportunity to learn and succeed through the Open University. My background, I joined the university 6 years ago. I have some financial services in my varied career aspects that I've covered over the many years. That being that I have worked for international publishers such as the Wall Street Journal and Handelsblatt, the German Business Finance and Daily. And then prior to joining the Open University was responsible working for a consultancy developing sales strategies for fintech companies. I was then employed by the Open University to head up their sales into financial services. So I have experience of exposing the OU brand into you guys, which is interesting. And then headed up account management, and now I'm looking after channel sales.
So thank you panel. So just to start our discussion and our first question, and one for you, Karen, and apologies because we don't have a crystal ball or even artificial intelligence that can predict the answer to this one. But what skills and knowledge will a professional banker require, say, in 10 to 15 years' time?
Okay, so and thanks to Robert, a lot of this has already been covered, which was great. So thank you for that, Robert. But I'd like to add a little bit more detail, if I may. I think what is absolutely key to this is digital disruption and the impact that is having upon the sector. I see it in two distinct areas. I see it around automation of the industry, and then I also see it around cloud transformation. So the transformation of business onto cloud. If I look at automation to begin with, obviously that's key across retail, IT, and investment banking. And of course, we've already covered AI and the impact of AI. And I think the bottom line, and I agree totally with Robert, and I think this is something that I think collectively that we should pick up on, it's about what impact is that having upon the customer and the customer experience. And I think that therefore impacts totally on the skills deficit that I think we are beginning to experience and will see more and more, and that's around the softer skills. It's around flexibility, it's around judgment, and it's around simple common sense that actually looks at what are the challenges that a customer has in this flexing environment, and how can I as an individual support and help that customer through them. I think also you're looking at, the legacy that we have in terms of the overhaul of core banking platforms. We get this in the press constantly. This is where, your customers get, you're losing the following of customers. In order to put that in place, you have to have a skill set that is around review of business, performance and management of risk. And again, it's looking at the whole of the business in one piece, rather than having a siloed exposure to the business. So I would therefore advocate that what that means in terms of future skill requirements is that you're looking at a need to have a total overview of the business. So what you're looking at there again is developing leadership and management that looks at the whole aspect of the business rather than in certain elements. Touching upon leadership and management again, which I know that Robert touched upon, I would say again, in this sector, one of the challenges that we are going to see more and more in the future is that just because you are incredibly technically competent, i.e. you're very good in your silo part of your business, that does not make you a good manager. And that is, I think, one of the big building blocks for the future, is that you need to put in place increasing management training and development in order to move the business forward, in order to take the business into the cloud, to encompass digital skills. You're going to have high-performing teams. You're going to have emotional intelligence compared to IQ. EQ versus IQ. EQ is going to be more and more prevalent as we move forward. How do you instill that? How do you actually encompass those high-performing teams to take forward the innovation and the change, to have visionary and reliant leaders for the business moving forward? So I think what I'm saying is reiterating what Robert has talked about. It's about leadership and management. It's about the soft skills. Then if we move around into the whole area of digital, and particularly around data analytics, I would say as we move forward, again, it's that de-siloing of the business. It's understanding the business as a whole as you're looking at what are the trends in the data, what's the data telling me, what do I draw down? Because to make the customer happy, we need to be developing more innovative products, we need to be communicating better to our customer. So that produces a type of individual who needs to have communication with a technological literacy linked into that. So I'm going to advocate the OU here. We have, the apprenticeship at level 6 and level 7 around digital skills, and we also have the chartered manager degree apprenticeship at level 6, and then moving into level 7 for leadership and management in the future. We're going to be a great partner for you. Sorry about the sound.
I'll just go into the other panellists there. Anything anybody wants to add? Any different views about skills?
I'll add something in here. I think I agree with everything you said. I think one of the biggest disruptors for banking and in fact the whole financial services industry is actually unfortunately being driven by regulation and the advent of the accountability regimes, SM and CR. Some of you will know all about that. It's as a RegTech firm, it's one of the biggest issues that our clients are talking to us about, and it absolutely touches on everything you've said there. The accountability regimes, as you know, is about actually being able to be very, very clear about who's responsible for what in a bank or a financial institution. And that lends itself to all sorts of challenges, particularly from a top-down perspective. So that really touches not just senior managers like the board, non-executive directors, but a massive chunk of every institution, particularly the banks, where at the very least, if you're not a senior manager, you may be required to be deemed fit and proper, which is quite a vague and general expression, but touches on competence, capability, qualifications, conduct, professionalism, and that has to be assessed and validated every year. It touches on everybody else in the sense that people have to comply with conduct rules, and actually the consequences of breaching conduct rules result in notifiable events to the regulator. So more and more people are exposed in the world of banking to the rigors of regulation. But I firmly believe that with the right levels of education, the right kind of attitudes and behaviours within a firm, and working in partnership with professional bodies, if that's grasped in a positive way, the driver ceases to become the regulation, and the driver focuses back in on commercial success, driving the right kind of outcomes for the consumer and also for the staff within the organisation. So I do feel that this is a game changer, and actually it does throw up lots of challenges about what the future education agenda needs to look like to equip people to behave well, to do the right things, to be, or to use that popular expression these days, to be mindful at all times of the impact of the things that they're doing right here, right now, on the consumer, on their business, and on their peers and their colleagues. And actually, is that just about professional qualifications? I would really argue that that's a key component. But how does that then manifest itself in the organisation through ongoing development, growth, brave, people being brave and calling out things that they don't agree with, or it's actually contradicting the key requirements and ambitions for firms and indeed the regulator. And being an advocate of good CPD, I think that has an increasing role to play in every organisation, and it can't just be a tick box to deliver the required number of hours every year. It's got to be meaningful. It's got to have some relationship back to consumer peers and to the organisation. So I think that's about opportunity, and for me that's a very positive thing. And a lot of our tier one banking clients have said that the regime has actually been very cathartic, and actually the consequences of it, of actually tackling the problems, have actually resulted in a lot more clarity and direction, and it's been very, very positive. So whilst that's in here, I think I want to look at that from a positive perspective and not a negative regulatory stick that's going to be used to beat the organisations up with.
Okay, so thank you for that. And I think moving on from that and thinking about how we develop and review our qualifications in future, and focusing on sort of financial technology and operations management, sustainability, and the sort of risk models. Sara, I actually want to ask you, because you head up curriculum development for Code Clan, so I'd be really interested. I know you've worked with other professions as well, that wouldn't have been classed as tech. So I'm interested in understanding how that sort of curriculum developed.
Well, first of all, I've been involved with SQA in writing qualifications for the Curriculum for Excellence, which is almost a bad word sometimes, but in computing science and then in software development. And I have an issue with qualifications at some point. And I think particularly in the discussions we're having here, qualifications take a long time to develop. They're often a very small sector that contributes to that. I've had both negative and positive history with that, in seeing too many people of one sector contributing to a national qualification that doesn't reflect the industry. They're not reviewed very often, and often they don't exist for the things that we really need to be measuring someone's attainment in. So I think there's a shift here in what is a qualification and what is its value. And if you're adding it to a modern apprenticeship, or you're putting it as part of a CPD, really looking at it a little more cleanly. I think the qualifications we probably don't want to get rid of, and part of the discussion is what do we want to hold on to, is just what Robert referred to, are the core banking competencies, understanding what banking is, understanding how it's working, understanding the ethics of it, and the deeper level meanings that carry through your whole professional life. But modern qualifications need to be reviewed. I'm also arguing from this point of Code Clan, where we develop courses that are going to become qualifications for other industries. So we work with the Law Society of Scotland, and we have a course that is a very short, intensive course at this point, that members get CPD verified units for. And it's about understanding how tech teams work. So it's a very practical course. People start coding at the very beginning. They are learning, through the learning to code an application, they're discussing the cloud, APIs, parallel programming, all sorts of aspects of technology that they've maybe heard of but don't know. And this was primarily driven by a big law firm up in Scotland, actually international, who said they had legal teams that had to work with tech teams and they didn't know what they were talking about. So they really needed to get a grip on the tools, the technique, the language, the whole process of developing softwares, developing applications, or any digital products. So this course, the second day of it, is also about data, analyzing, aggregating data, putting it together, building it onto the program you built day 2, and day 3 is building a front end to that. So you get a full coverage in this. This now goes to the Law Society, it becomes CPD verified, and it starts to create a new track for a legal technologist role. So we're looking at a whole different, an evolution of courses, qualifications into an avenue that starts to look at the tools you have and how you're going to use those effectively, efficiently, how you're going to collaborate with them, how you're going to push a business forward using technology as a tool. So
you're really looking at collaboration then?
Yeah, when you look at the tools that software companies use, and I'd say go have a look if you don't know, they're great. You know, the Trellos and Slack, and they're project management collaborative tools. Slack is a communication tool that's used by most tech companies. A lot of them are free, a lot of them are online, they're through or Google. You use your calendaring, you use things that you can collaborate all the way across distributed teams. So it creates a different dynamic in how teams work. We also look a lot at agile methodologies and how we're looking at projects in an agile way and integrating UX into that. Everything is test-driven development. We're using new tools and ways of working to create new products and to create collaborative associations.
So just sort of building on that then, Paul, I'd be interested from Metrobank's perspective about how, because you're a different, am I allowed to call you a bank?
Of course you are.
Yeah. And your stores, it is different and it's set up and the way that you might collaborate. So what do you see as the tools of the future? And you've got written a chapter in your book about what that looks like.
Thank you for plugging the book. That's very good. Yeah, no, I would echo. I mean, new product development is an area that's completely changing. Time was I used to hire a credit card manager and they'd sit there and tweak rates and think about interest, and that would be all they did. Now, it's just completely different about how you think about credit, how you develop a product, how you test it with customers, and how quickly you put it into production. So it's very agile. You're creating personas, you're creating a minimal viable product and putting it out there and iterating, and completely different. And that creates different skills that are required and different training requirements as well. I think that the thing I'd sort of pull out is that I think you need people that can translate in the business between technology and the business. I think that's really important. That's something that we spend a lot of time on, that kind of translation point. But the other point I'd make actually is I think actually being able to manage and understand partnerships really well is going to be a dominant theme in the future. And banks are now starting to not try and do everything themselves. So you're seeing more and more banks partnering with fintechs and other market participants, managing those relationships, managing the risk for the customer of those relationships, managing the commerciality of those relationships, managing the technology dependencies of those relationships is incredibly important. It's a great news story because it actually means that we can deliver great things for customers, and actually there's more than enough to go around for everybody in the market. But actually making those partnerships really work is an art, not a science, and actually requires a lot of deep thinking. So I think actually investing in training around that I think is going to be very, very important. I think the other thing is just as a dominant consideration is security, cyber security, data protection. It's a dominant theme that I think going forward, we spend a lot of time thinking about to ensure that we look after our customers. Our model is very much service driven. This is not an advert for Metro, but we take a very different sort of value set into how we design things. And I think our belief in this new world is that you need to stand for something. It's not just about having technology that can do X, Y, and Z and plug into Y. It's actually about being standing for something in the market, and people will choose you, as was said earlier, for your brand because they know what you're standing for and the value set you bring to the stuff that you develop. So we think that's kind of an important discipline to train in.
So one of the things that just building from that then that you mentioned was the way that you introduce and you develop products, and I think maybe Robert had mentioned as well about that challenge with how a fintech develops compared to how we would traditionally develop and release something within a banking environment, and that could be quite challenging. So Callum, actually I would be interested in hearing from you about how the importance of the organisation's culture when it's actually managing innovation, and how do we support within that regulatory environment?
Well, that's a real tough one, because what is culture? I think that's something we all try to grapple with, and actually when you listen to everybody out there, that everyone's banging on about good culture, etc., but actually organisations find that really difficult to define. I'll try and map it back to a culture that's delivering great outcomes for consumers, obviously, but actually a culture which is focused on doing the right things the right way to deliver commercial success as well. Because what we're talking about here is an industry where it needs to survive. We need to make money, and it sometimes sounds like a dirty couple of words, but we need to think about commercials. So if an organisation has got that right, it really needs to look at new technology in that sense, to actually say what sort of impact will bringing in a certain bit of technology have on one or more of these key things, like consumers and peers and market. And then clearly there has to be some clearly definable benefits to that, either making products and services more accessible to the consumer or more cost effective, or making more efficient and delivering better outcomes in terms of quality of advice, for example. But I think that's all very well, but the organisation's got to think about that in terms of what about the culture in our organisation in terms of being able to drop new technology in. Have people got the knowledge and skills to be able to cope with that? And I've seen lots of situations in my career where new technology comes in and it's dropped in, and we get a nice email or an internal memo in my original days to say something starts next week and can you please start using it. Fantastic. But that is doomed from the start. And so what really needs to come alongside that is, okay, so how are we going to bring this new technology? How are we going to equip our people to make this a real value add? How are we going to make this successful? What training and development do we need to do? What behaviours do we need to shift, if we need to shift any? And I think it's very easy for IT and indeed senior management very often to say, let's tackle a problem, let's be innovative about it. But sometimes the crucial bit about investing in the people and the people capital that's really going to bolt on to that technology to make it really successful is very often forgotten. And in the days of reducing costs, we've all seen L&D teams diminished, and I think sometimes L&D is the bit that goes first, training, and we'll compromise on that training. So if we don't get that training right, that innovative technology will probably fail.
Anything to add?
I think for me, culture's what you say when people aren't in the room, right? I think in terms of, so I think for Metro, we view that as our sort of core comparative advantage versus the market, because we spend a lot of time ensuring that new joiners have the right culture. How does that relate to technology? I think it's easy to get very impressed by new technologies. It's easy to say we need to do X, Y, and Z and not think about customer outcomes. It's often easy to think about the revenue you're going to generate without thinking about as I say, the customer outcomes. So I think for us, we view our culture internally as the last defence potentially around doing something wrong. Technology is incredibly liberating for banking, but it comes with risks. And I think for us, managing culture in a way that protects us is important. But also the other side of that is creating a culture of innovation where ideas can flourish from the shop floor to the CEO's office. So we have something called killing stupid bank rules. So people are actively encouraged to kill a stupid bank rule, and they'll get a prize if it's a really stupid rule, because we are actively trying to take out friction points for the customer, and it's about having those communication channels with the whole organisation so you can surface those.
I'd like to add as well, if I may, Jo. I think, I agree with everything that the panel has shared with us here around culture. And I suppose it's about taking people with you. How do you take people with you? I think it comes back to something that we've touched upon this morning, and perhaps need to just spend a little bit more time. It's actually upskilling existing people, existing staff, upskilling them so that they can move with you on that. I don't like to use the word journey, but I can't think of another word right now. That take them with you, as much as we love or hate it, the Marmite factor around the levy, actually the levy gives us an opportunity to review all of our staff, all of what the programs are, and to put it forward in terms of a whole upskilling program as to what the business needs. And it gives you much quicker returns on investment as well, because it's applied right back. So I would say we're actually at a bit of a watershed moment in terms of allowing culture to change, because we've got a tool to give us the opportunity to do that.
That's a really interesting point. I think just moving further on from that, and Sarah, I'm going to come back to you, but from working with other professions as well, as what lessons can we learn from other professions or industries who are also developing in a fast-changing environment?
We've been limited to, we work with, as I said, the Law Society of Scotland. We're also working with Education Scotland, which is interesting in upskilling teachers and in and actually upskilling the computing science teachers, but which is worrying. But I think a lot of what I think has been very good is when you have a training program that actually teaches you new skills, and we've been talking about this generational difference of the young coming in and having a lot of tech skills and the existing people in a company not having the same, and there's almost a fear that happens where the older generations is too shy to ask, how do you do that? How do you work with that? Or what do you do? So you need to, some of the training that we found has really worked is teaching coding where you gain control over the applications that you're using. So when we did program for the legal firm that I mentioned, we opened up a smart contract. They opened up a smart contract. They opened up the service level agreement within it and learned how to change the algorithm. So suddenly they had control over what they were producing and doing for a client. And it wasn't that difficult. It wasn't that scary. They could do it. Meant they didn't need all the IT people. They didn't need to ask. And then across the piece, everyone in that room had equal skill set across the ages, across the discipline, across the business. And I thought that was very empowering to give new skills that create resilience, that allowed creative problem solving to happen. They had much greater efficiency. Things became smarter, faster, and I think just learning technical skills, we've got to catch up. Yeah. And everyone needs those as a core competency somewhere in their skill set.
Lots of reverse mentoring.
There is a bit of reverse mentoring. That multi-generational learning can also be very good for the team across the piece. So it's a lot of things that work towards accelerating all of us down a technical path is going to be good.
Okay, thank you. To add to that, Callum?
Yeah, I think it's been mentioned this morning already. I think we can look to organisations like Google, Amazon, where they're delivering fantastic results in every sense, and actually changing the world. And that's through encouraging and recruiting the right people to join, supporting them with the right kind of environments and culture and the right kind of training and development, and actually really trying to encourage that innovative approach, which again has a strong commercial and consumer focus. So I don't think we need to look very far to that. And I think sometimes it's quite easier for us in financial services to be quite siloed in that way. And actually, well, we are very, very special. Well, we're not. We won't survive if we have that attitude. So by starting to look out with our own world, I think we'll get some really good ideas and learn from that.
Okay, thank you. Anything to add?
I'd just like to draw upon some of the experiences that we've had with other sectors of our clients who, in terms of enabling to educate and upskill their ecosystem, i.e. their suppliers and their supply chain and their partners, it's about embedding formal qualifications into existing programs that allow learners to, if you like, double up without putting too much exposure on those learners in terms of what they can physically do. So it's embedding certification programs. It's also flavouring programs because sectors, even particular corporates, have very specific needs. We all like to think that we're different, and it's looking at how can you use a relationship with a partner to provide that type of content and support that really upskills and adds to a very particular sector. So for example, if you are putting learners through a program, but actually these learners are all within HR, how do we add particular content and flavour that allows that to move forward? So I'd say it's about delivering and managing those partnerships, which I think, Paul, you had mentioned, and I think that's a really salient point, and thinking about how you can make those partnerships work better for you to secure that relationship that you need with your staff and learning.
So just, Paul, can I maybe ask you, so what, if we looked at it from a professional body perspective, so what stage or in the education journey our professional bodies are most important? Where would you?
I think it's for me, it's lifelong learning. I think it matters throughout. I'm a big believer in not discounting people because they happen to have been, born in the wrong decade and weren't taught coding or whatever. I think actually when you get close to this technology, it's not as scary as it looks, and everybody can take part. And I think professional education is valuable throughout one's career. I do have a slightly old-fashioned view that if you're going to be a banker, you do need to understand capital and liquidity and deposits and lending and the basics of what we're actually trying to achieve, because there is a risk with too much technology education that we actually kind of forget how a bank works. So you may argue, I guess, early in a career that's a useful sort of foundation to have, certainly. I think risk management is important as well early on because of the need to safeguard customer sort of outcomes. But we're big believers in hiring for attitude and training for skill at all ages, and I think that's really important.
Okay, thank you for that. I've got one sort of final question, if you like, but I think we've probably answered it quite well already as a panel. But maybe get your pen and paper ready for the answers, which is, ultimately what skills and knowledge do we think that we need? So the discussion, you've sort of hit the nail on the head with some of the topics that you've raised about liquidity, and I suppose it's the importance of making sure that we retain the knowledge and skills that we need, and that we remember the important detail and history behind banking and what it is as a profession, but then building on the culture. And also,
I'd like to add to that. One of the things technology is really marvellous at doing is capturing and generating stacks of data. And if that just goes into a big bucket, and it's presented in a lovely spreadsheet for the senior managers and the board, again, what's it really telling anybody? And I think in terms of skills and knowledge going forward, I think the ability to use that data wisely and intelligently to produce really good insight and intelligence will be one of the key things for new entrants to have going into the industry. But also, very importantly, and we've talked a lot today about new entrants, but what about senior managers, NEDs, chairmen, boards? and the people already working in the industry. How are they going to take all that information and do something productive with it?
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you, panel. That's the. Oh, I was going to say the hard questions over, but we might have to come. But so just handing over to the audience. Has anybody got any questions for any of the panel? Fiona? You've got a microphone. Thank you, Matthew.
Sarah, this question's really for you. I was at the the Scottish Women in Technology's first awards last week, and there was a range of businesses, schools up for awards. There was only, I think, 10, 11 awards. Nobody from financial services sector was there. And John Swinney, when he was doing his speech, highlighted that there was only 18% of women in technology in Scotland. What do you think we can do as financial services organisations, first of all, to encourage more women into that space, but also encourage financial services to take part more and promote more what they're doing in that space?
It's it's a very salient point, because we in technology struggle with getting enough women into roles. We work with about 150 employers, all of whom want to hire women because they want the diversity on their team. And getting women to come on retraining courses has been the way we've been trying to do it. I think we have to offer different avenues in, and not just expect that people can come and do a full-time intensive education program to train in something that they maybe don't know what the value is of a career progression. So I think we need to be very open about explaining where you can go in a career in tech or in fintech or in banking. That's not always very evident for people coming back in to retrain. To offer opportunities for part-time upskilling, to have a gentle entry back into full-time training, to do that. We're prompting quite a few companies, mostly financial companies, to give us scholarship money to help women from different backgrounds enter into tech. We are also advocating, a lot of companies do have the ability to offer flexible working conditions and to reflect that people have families or they're caring for someone in a different way. And so it's opening up all the ways of working and making them a bit more user-friendly for women. I think will encourage more into that. We're also trying to go further down the chain to get girls interested in technology and in certain programs, from Apps for Good, which is gets children to create applications that have a social conscience to them, that contribute back, to get them in understanding the creative aspects of technology. I think a lot of times we miss young women because they don't think of a role in tech as being interesting, creative, or in any way exciting or fun. And it goes back to the parents and the teachers not knowing that too, how creative and how interesting this industry is. You know, and everything we've talked about, it is creative, it is interesting, it's very cutting edge. We're making fundamental decisions about our future. And we need 50% of the population doing that in terms of all these sectors. So we need to expose that, make that relevant and make that clear so that we get more. There's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, definitely. Just on that point though, for the industry, we did have a finalist. So I'm proud to say that the Chartered Banking Institute, we did have one of the finalists at the awards last week, which is our apprentice, our IT apprentice was there. So we are very proud of that. So small, but it just shows you that we're not a large organisation, but all organisations can embrace that. You can embrace technology. It can make a difference, and it's something that can be collaborated with. It can be shared, and we can build on that for the future. It's not something to be frightened of. It's something absolutely to embrace, because who knows where we can evolve from there.
Could I ask something about bringing you back into the industry? We're very lucky in that the Pro VC of the Open University is Martha Lane Fox. Martha Lane Fox is a huge advocate of digital technology, and in particular in bringing women back into the industry. And through her connections, we're currently working with a very large American investment bank, I won't say the name, who are looking to, who have completely pinpointed that there is a lack of coding skills. And working with them, we're developing a program which is specifically designed to encourage women to take that course, to become coders, and then the program allows that once they have qualified, that they are applicable to have an interview with a consortium of investment banks who are looking to have those skills within the business. And those individuals are then able to work remotely, so that they're still connected to the business, but they're actually offering a huge and filling a huge skills gap. So I suppose it's about this partnering and working with your supply chain in looking at those innovative solutions. So we'd be very happy to talk around how we might be able to do something like that for anybody who's interested.
Okay, so if there's no more questions, I would just like to thank all of our panel members, so Karen and Callum and Paul and Sara for their contribution. I think it's now time for a coffee break, a refreshment time for you all, and we'll see you for the final session. Thank you very much.